Okay, we're now in a position where we can export. We've baked, just as a reminder, we've baked back the animation onto the joints and stripped away the rig. Just on your rigs for your characters, just be careful. Your rigs are a little more complex, so take the time to make sure all the joints are baked, even the set-driven keys, and then you can find that you can strip away the rig and they'll have no effect because you've baked the animation onto the joints. Okay, so now we've simplified the scene down and we're ready to export as an FBX. So this is what we'll cover in this video. You'll find to export, you go to File, Export All, and bring up the dialog box where you've got the option for, you can export as a ASCII, a binary, you can even export as OBJs, but we want the FBX, not the DAE FBX, but the FBX in itself. Okay. We've not got any references in our scene and we don't want to preserve them, so let's turn that off. And if we go Export All, it will throw up a dialog box, so let's just save it to the desktop and save it as ARM Export and click on Save. Okay, it will throw up the FBX dialog box. Okay, so literally FBX will allow you to export geometry, joints, animation, even lights and cameras from your scene. For this exercise and for the assessment, all I want is the animation, the joints, and the geometry and the skin file. Okay, so let's go through what we need. Okay, so in terms of geometry, we only really need the smooth mesh. Now, this is not the subdivision smooth, which you get if you press 3 on your keyboard. This is just keeping the normals, the angle that your normals smooth at. So rather than have that faceted look on your geometry, make sure smooth mesh is selected. Okay. If you have got any NURBS in your scene and perhaps you want to take that from one bit of software to another, there is the option to keep NURBS as NURBS or NURBS as interactive display mesh, that kind of thing. But we've not got NURBS in our scene. Certainly make sure that you strip away all the NURBS controls. But also in geometry you've got things like, do you want to triangulate it? Well, no, we want to keep it all as quads. So really the only thing that you need for geometry is smooth mesh. Okay, so you can actually close the geometry down. The next thing we want is animation. Yes, we want the animation, so keep that ticked on. You can keep the resample as Euler or Euler interpolation. That's kind of a default. Sometimes game engines prefer quaternions, which is there, but let's keep it as resample as Euler. It's okay. There is an option in FBX to bake as you export, which is fine as a process, but ultimately it will still keep the rig within it. I prefer that you bake animation in Maya, that way you can test it, make sure everything's working okay, strip the rig out and then exporting. So in this instance we're not baking animation as we go, we've already done that, so we can keep that off. And then lastly, deformed models refers to the actual skin data that the geometry has. So yes, we want deformed models and we want to keep the skin data. Okay, if you have got blend shapes, if you're working on files later on and you've got blend shapes as part of the animation, then tick that on, but because we don't in this instance, I'll not have them ticked on. Okay. If you haven't got them in the scene and you do tick things that you shouldn't, don't worry about it, it won't crash. well, hopefully not, or it won't throw up any errors. If it's just not there, then it won't export it. But I always find I just want to go through these options so you're aware of what they are. Okay, so that's the animation. We don't want to bake it, we already have. We do want to include the animation, and we do want the skin data as well. Okay. There's options like you can reduce key data on your curves. I prefer not to do this because it automatically kind of destroys some of your data. So I prefer not to do it. So keep all your data intact unless you're working on a game engine where keeping the data as low as possible is priority. And in this instance we don't need to, so there are options for automatically reducing data if it recognises keys are the same, that kind of thing. Okay. We don't want constraints, we've stripped everything off. We don't want cameras, we don't want any lights. Okay. Embed media, I prefer not to embed media, I prefer to keep textures separately. If you have embed media ticked on, it will literally embed textures within your FBX file. Personally, I don't like this because if you want to, if you're working on a game project and you want to edit textures, it's better that they're as separate texture files. It's much easier to manage, it's much easier to see errors, whereas if everything's embedded in FBX, I just find it's a little more difficult to error check, and obviously every time you correct a texture you've got to re-export the FBX, so in this case let's not embed the media. Okay, so that should be it, and literally, so just as a summary, we've got the geometry, we've got the animation, and we've got the skin data. Okay, literally that's all we need. Just as a reminder, there's advanced options where you can go in and change units. You can go in and change which axis is up. Maya always uses Y up. For those that use 3ds Max, it's Z is up, so you can convert it if you get animations coming in on the side, that kind of thing. Okay, so there you go. So you're ready to export, and you can export. Generally, it will give you a log file and tell you the result. Okay, so this has told me that it's exported the FBX to the desktop. Okay, and then just as a last check, you can go to File, New, and File, Import, Desktop, ARM Export FBX, import that in, and then literally you can check that the FBX is actually fine. Okay, so there we go, it's imported exactly as we want to. So it's the skin, the geometry, the skin data, and the skeleton underneath, and as you can see all the keys are baked on there. So check your FBXs back in Maya just to make sure that they have worked, and that's a very good indication that they'll work in game as well. So always make sure if you are working on a games project that you are error checking your work before you pass it on to another team or another part of the pipeline.